All right, big round of applause for Alisha. Keep it going. Go crazy.
So I wanted to be a marine biologist, and it never worked out for me, but I still love going to ocean tide pools. So I met a guy online, and we had this magical first date that at one point we were actually slow dancing in a park barefoot, and there wasn't even music. And then his second date, he says, I don't know if you'd be into this sort of thing, but I know about a tide pool in a cave. So I'm already thinking, like, this is my guy. And so I show up for this second date, and he opens the door, and he has been crying. And it turns out that his favorite uncle died that day, and it was sudden, and he'd already booked a red-eye flight home to the East Coast for the funeral for that night. And I was, of course, like, we can cancel this, you know? And he said, no, I love the idea of having a couple hours of distraction, and we'll just go, and we'll have a lovely time, and I don't have to think about family and funerals and death. And I said, great. And so we went, and the tide pool in the cave was as magical as you can imagine. And we only left because we had dinner reservations in Ventura, this restaurant that has like elk on the walls, and they serve alligator and bison or whatever. And so we're rushing across the beach, and as we're going along, there's this big black duck with, like, I think they're called cormorants. It has like a long curvy neck, and it's dirty, and it's stumbling, and it's sick. And I decide I have to save it, which actually will make a lot more sense about me when you hear the second part of the story. And so I grab, we'll call him Bob for privacy, I grab his sweatshirt and I wrap up this duck and I'm holding onto it and I'm rushing down the beach and I'm yelling at him to call a wildlife rehabilitator that specializes in seabirds, and it's fighting me and I'm fighting it and it's fighting me and I'm rushing, and then it's not fighting me anymore. And I pull the hoodie down and the neck is just flopping there. And it's dead, and that whole, like, keeping him distracted from the whole thing, funeral and stuff. And I failed miserably. But I have it worse, because as with anything, when it dies, it releases its bowels. So that really pretty second date sundress was just covered. And so both of us rushed down to the ocean's edge, and I'm just trying to wash away the bird poop. And he is trying to give this duck like a dignified send-off. So he's putting it out to sea. But the tide's coming in. So it just keeps rolling back up to his feet. We have to give up. But we're not going to give up on this date, because now we're both really in it, you know? So we get back to his car, and he had like dirty gym shorts in the trunk or whatever, so I like change into his dirty gym clothes. And I have this theory that if I just hang my wet dress out the window on the drive to Ventura, the breeze will dry it and everything will be fine. And so we're driving up, and he's really opening up to me because he's clearly like feeling it too. And he starts being really honest, and he tells me that he's an alcoholic. This is not a deal breaker because he's sober now. And he tells me that he's a drug addict. I have a lot of addiction in my family, and I know that there's life after that. This is not a deal breaker. And then he tells me that while he was an alcoholic, he was a drunk driving accident where he was paralyzed. And when his online profile said that he carries his baggage well, he did not mean emotional, which I thought. He was referencing his colostomy bag. This was not a deal breaker for me. I actually grew up with a quadriplegic father, and so if anyone felt like they could understand and be through that, it was me, and I was still on board. And then he told me that the year it took him to relearn how to walk, he developed an addiction to hookers. So now I'm really out of my comfort zone, but I like him so much. And if we arrive in Ventura, my dress is not dry. That was a bad plan. But there's a thrift store on the corner, and so I run in, and they're closing, so they don't want to sell me anything. I said, please, I'll just buy whatever dress is on the end of the rack. And it's a maternity dress. And they don't have a changing room. And Bob sees they have mattresses. And so he lifts one up like a shield. We all have the same question. I do not know why they sell mattresses in the thrift store. They did. So he holds it up like a shield, and in my classiest moment in life, on my second date, I strip down naked in the middle of a thrift store behind a mattress, and I put on that maternity dress. And I pay my $8.99, and we make it for our dinner reservations. And we're both given these big menus, and he's looking it over, deciding what he wants for dinner. And I can't think about food. I'm deciding what I want for my life. And is it him? And I was at such a loss because I felt like I could get over all the things he'd said, but just not one more. And then the waitress came over, and she asked him a question that ended up clarifying everything for me. I did have a deal breaker with him. He's not my soulmate. We never went out again because when she asked him what he wanted for dinner, I swear to you, he answered, "I'll have the duck."